Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have guest Richard Bruce with us. Now, Richard reached out to us at the Leak Project a couple weeks ago, and he's got a really cool YouTube channel with over 30,000 subscribers. Just look up Richard Bruce on YouTube. And he's also got a website called freeourworld.org. Now, Richard says he's a targeted individual, and ever since he released some video footage of what he thinks are shapeshifters in Hollywood, he says that he's had all sorts of attacks. He gets stalked. He has helicopters fly over his house at very peculiar times. And he feels that there might be an AI interface that's actually connected with helicopters flying over his house and other strange phenomena that's causing him issues. He talks about demons and how he thinks that a lot of times when people see certain clips and images of what looks like somebody shapeshifting, it isn't a reptilian shapeshifter from another planet per se, but most likely some type of demonic influence. Now, this is a very fascinating interview that I have with Richard, and although I don't know what to think about some of the things that he says, I can certainly appreciate him coming on the show and giving us his testimony. He thinks that the world is controlled clandestinely, literally, by demons and an off-world source that could be reptilian. This is one of the first interviews I've done like this, and I know that many of you that listen to Leak Project, I'm sure you've seen some footage on YouTube or other places where you can see anchor men, anchor women, their eyes start to shift. I've seen people in the entertainment industry, it looks like they've got two sets of eyelids, and maybe it was just very meticulously photoshopped. Could be the reflection of the light with contacts. There's a whole bunch of more realistic explanations. But when you listen to this presentation and some of the stuff Richard talks about, it really makes you wonder. Check out leakproject.com. If you subscribe on Leak Project, it's absolutely free. You'll have access to exclusive content, and you'll also have the option to download and listen live stream to our podcasts ad-free. Now, that does cost a couple of bucks if you want to download or listen to them live streaming ad-free. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day wherever you are. Enjoy the show, and remember, be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Have a wonderful day. This demonic presence that you see a lot of times on TVs where you'll see anchor men or women, basically their eyes will get weird. You'll see what looks like these 4D skulls start going on and stuff. And a lot of times I see it as just camera anomalies and stuff. But I have seen some before where I've been, that's impressive. I'm really wanting to see if there's a way that we could technically break it down and find out more about it versus just what we're seeing with our eyes based upon whatever it could be.
Yes, as a matter of fact, British director, British documentary filmmaker Chris Turner has me in a two-part series, and as a matter of fact, we set up a separate GoFundMe account to do a shape-shifting analysis, which he was going to conduct over there, and we were trying to get some money together to get some of the technical aspects of that, you know, the various cameras and everything else that we need for it. So that's actually in the works as we speak, but it may be a while before we get it off the ground.
Tell us more about that.
Well, basically, Chris Turner and Daniel Rogerson are filmmakers, British filmmakers, and I contacted Chris a couple of years ago, and because I had seen that he was working on the whole reptilian shapeshifting thing in a movie series called Alien Reptilian Legacy. So I thought I would tell him about my channel and what I discovered, and that I had, discovered this whole thing. I discovered the subject on YouTube and started working on it, and showed him some of my footage, and this led to that, and then he actually sent me a thumb drive, and then I recorded some interview footage, and he's got me in two parts of the movie. I just had like a kind of a lead-in on the first movie, and I think he's going to do more of a feature of me on the second. But he was pretty intrigued by the shape-shifting footage and would like to have a full, as a matter of fact, he had me send him about 2 hours of shape-shifting footage for the British-held RepCon, which is pretty cool. It's like a convention for all the people that are interested in the reptilian subject, and all kinds of big names showed up there. Simon Parks, some other people, and James Bartley. And so it's pretty. A lot of people are starting to take this seriously, and the interest is growing.
So, what do you think these demonic forces are, and where do you think they come from? So, when you see somebody's teeth start to shapeshift into like vampirish teeth, real sharp fangs, you see their fingers start to come out. You don't think that's just based upon the light and the actual equipment itself not being able to pick up good enough footage? You feel there's like an outer source that's causing that?
Oh yeah, I mean, you get a lot of this. People think it's all kinds of things, every single kind of video error you can imagine, from a refresh rate to compression to just normal blurring that occurs. But a certain amount of experience with video and digital imagery will teach you, and common sense really. Like, for instance, if you look at I don't know if you're looking at the Free Our World page that you have up here, but
Yep.
you can see right there is Harrison Ford's face, and if you look at that, the red image there, and you can see there's a zoom in on that shape that's on his forehead. Now, there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that could cause a pattern as specific as that. I mean, you can see what looks like, it almost looks like horny toad spikes coming right out of his forehead. And this is the movie Blade Runner, okay?
That's a classic movie.
It is one of my favorites, and I mean, I'm telling you, Rex, there is no horned beasts in the script. No matter how hard you want to believe it's not true. There's just absolutely no, non-humans besides androids, which are in the shape of humans, not beasts of any kind with spikes coming out of their face. And this shot that you're seeing here, that little picture of Harrison Ford, that's taken in a far shot of him in that scene where that guy is chasing him through the bathroom, right?
Uh-huh.
He's in the bathroom, and he's sitting on he sits on the side of the bathtub, and he's like, and he's putting the bandage on, and he's, but what's happening is, and this is where the shape-shifting really starts to come out. Now, again, it could be one of two things. It could be that he's a physical shape-shifting beast, or in my thinking is more likely, because I've actually seen similar but not as strong shape-shifting on myself, a similar evil, maniacal, demonic grin. It's one of those two things, but what's happening, Rex, is that I believe it's what I call photonic delay, either low light or the amount of distance from the subject to the camera. But in either case, photonic delay, photonic weakness, that somehow reveals the underlying form of the person. And this, Rex, I believe, is where we get the classic transparency in a mirror that we see in vampire movies. Because what's happening when you look in a mirror is that you're not looking at the actual person, you're looking at a photonic image of the person, and that somehow reveals something about that person, that transparency. And that was the transparency that I actually have a pretty good example of, that I just happened to catch on Barack Obama in his 2013 State of the Union address. You actually see his hand moving in front of his chest, and it's transparent. And I think that's exactly what people are seeing. And what it is exactly, I couldn't tell you, but what the indications are that it is a demonic being or spirit being in him that somehow manifests in a image rather than looking directly at the person with your naked eye.
Now, also with high-definition cameras, there's the 4K out now, which is even better than the older high-definition 1080p, 720, 480i, etc. So I guess it would be more difficult now to hide stuff like this, or do you think it would be easier because they could distort the digital frequencies somehow?
Well, several things about that. I think that, first of all, they're on to me. They know about this, and what I've noticed in newer movies is that they check their footage, or at least it looks to me like more people are checking their footage to make sure this isn't showing up. So I would say if you're going to scan movies for reptilian shapeshifting, look for sci-fis or movies with a lot of dark scenes from before 1995. But as far as if it does still show up, and/or the directors or people making these movies are not checking for it, and it is still there, I think it would show up even better in the 4K.
I mean, you would think so, absolutely. Now, what is this we're looking at right here with the illegal use of undeclared invisibility spy orb technology? And are you a targeted individual because of all this exposure?
Rex, I mean, there's one thing I can say with all certainty, because some people have some doubts or question about why they are harassed. In my case, I simply do not. It is absolutely because I uploaded this reptilian shape-shifting footage, because within 15 minutes of uploading my first full report on the movie The Matrix, which I called Reptilian Matrix Message, within 15 minutes, no kidding, there was like 7 or 8 helicopters hovering above my apartment, and it was so loud and so obvious that I thought it was a drug bust. I thought, oh my gosh, one of my neighbors here in this, it was a big apartment building in Woodland Hills, and I thought it was, somebody's getting busted or somebody's gone crazy with a gun or something. But that's when this harassment first started. And there's no question, 0.0 doubt that it was because of the content of a YouTube movie that I uploaded. What kind of a country are we living in when you upload a movie to YouTube and all of a sudden you got helicopters buzzing you day and night, police showing up at your door for an obviously bogus reason? I can explain that whole incident to you. It's so obvious. They're looking for a guy that's been gone for 8 months on some sort of BS, parole check, and they have 4 LAPD at the door. Kinda doubt it. And not only that,
when did they show up?
They
at
showed
the door?
up. They just showed up at the door, April 6th.
Like how long after the video?
Oh, it was like this was probably maybe a month or 2 after that first incident, that first upload.
Okay.
And what's weird is that as soon as they knocked on the door, I just had a sense. I had a sense that there was something going on. And then as soon as I said, "Who is it?" and they said police, as soon as I knew it was police, I knew what they were there for. They were there for that movie that I uploaded. Now, when I opened the door, they're all acting normal and say, "Yes, we're looking for the previous guy." The guy's name was Preston, I think. And I looked at him and I said, "No. I've been living here for 8 months, so he must have been gone at least that long." And they kind of, milled around, said, "Okay," and kind of asked me some odd questions. And I could tell you're pretty smart. I've watched a few of your interviews, and I know that you can tell the way people are acting. There's something not right. Because I know I've got LAPD in my family. I've dealt with Los Angeles police plenty. I know how they act. I know what the story is. I've been living here all my life, and I'm 46 years old. I know how they act, and I can tell you that I knew something was up. And as I looked at them, they saw the smirk on my face, like I knew. And I kind of leaned out the door casually, and I said, "Well, boy, this guy Preston must have been a pretty serious offender. He got 4 officers here." And they all kind of shuffled uncomfortably, and the guy goes, "Yeah." And I knew then that they knew that I knew what they were really there for. Zero question about it. You could just totally tell. And not only that, but when he was, before we were talking, and then I said, "Yes, I'm Richard Bruce," and he goes, "You're Richard Bruce?" Almost like he knew who I was.
So what did you do when he said that?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you, Rex. My heart was pounding. I was like, "Oh crap!" I don't know what's going to happen. I've heard all kinds. I hadn't known the whole story about gang stalking and about how they kill people. They're serious. Whatever. When you piss these things off, they can really come at you. And so, I'll tell you at first. I was really freaked out by the helicopters. Not like panicking and running around screaming and stuff, but I was thinking, anything could happen. Basically, as a Christian for 20 years, I've kind of been ready for anything. I knew eventually they're going to find me out somehow, and I'm ready to take on the fight. When you understand that the true Christian will come under persecution, you're ready, and you can be, you're ready for the glory to be hung or killed for Jesus at any time. So I knew that eventually, but all those 20 years, I didn't face anything like this. I didn't have anything like this come at me. This is the weirdest thing that had ever happened to me. This was like, whoa, okay, finally, the reality of the darkness that I've been sensing suddenly came to my door, and it was for a movie that I uploaded to YouTube.
That's wild. And then what started happening after that? Walk us through a few more experiences you might have had soon after they went to your door, and then you had those helicopters. And were they the Black Hawk type helicopters? Were they the ones that were silent?
No, I never got the silent helicopters, but some people could even can look at the footage. First of all, I'll tell you one thing: they are smart about it. But on several occasions, there is just no explanation. Like one time, they do things covertly. I was in a parking lot of Fry's, standing behind Fry's, and all of a sudden, this black helicopter comes up to me, and I didn't have my video camera out and filming, and they knew it. And this sounds totally like it can't be true, but it is. They are watching me and I learned this firsthand because I had trouble believing somebody else if they said this, but they are watching you 24/7. They know exactly what you're doing. They know when my pants are down and I'm taking a piss and it's a good time to give me a buzz because they know I can't get outside with my video camera fast enough. That's how weird it is. But I was standing behind Fry's and this black helicopter comes up, no bull, comes right up to me and there's no one there and just hovers there with, you know, the helicopter blades, like, and I'm talking like 100 feet away, like flying low, like right there, just hovering, looking at me, and just a black unmarked helicopter. But let me just walk you through a little bit what happened from the beginning, because you might be a little bit, lost as to what, how this kind of progressed. What I can tell you is that when that happened, when I first uploaded that movie in January of 2013, and all of a sudden those helicopters were buzzing over my apartment. Like I said, at first I didn't know, I had no idea that it was directed at me. I didn't even think of it. I had zero inclination that something like that could be happening to me for what I did. It's only that I only figured it out later when it became totally obvious, because what happened next is that all of a sudden, that evening, and as the day progressed, I kept hearing these helicopters, and you would hear them starting out low, like a low rumble in the distance, and it get louder, and then louder, and then finally the whole apartment would shake. I'm on the third floor in Woodland Hills, so, and the whole place is shaking, and it flies over, and if it happens once, then you think, okay, it's just a helicopter in hot pursuit of somebody. But it kept happening. It would happen an hour, and then it would happen an hour later, and then it would happen at night, and in particular, it would happen in the middle of the night. And get this, they would do it at exactly 12 a.m., waking me up with this helicopter hovering low above my apartment and loud. I mean, so loud, it sounds like a jackhammer hitting the roof of the apartment, like, bah, 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 bah. I mean, I'm telling you, no one slept through that. I mean, it's mega loud. And, this, I had never experienced before in my life, and I'm like waking up and listening to this thing shaking the apartment. I'm like, whoa, this is getting serious. And this would continue day after day, and I began to notice because I would walk out of my apartment and walk down the street, I would notice these weird black SUVs like starting to kind of like drive slowly behind me, and I looked, and there was some that were unmarked, some that were Los Angeles Police Department. I just started noticing them, and then I kept noticing those helicopters. If I would be walking outside, they would be buzzing overhead, and not unmarked helicopters for the most part, Los Angeles Police Department helicopters, and not only that, but Los Angeles Fire Department helicopters on Ripley's, believe it or not. Because I know that if you haven't seen this firsthand, you just, if I was listening to somebody say this right now, I would say, maybe some of it's true, maybe he's kind of frayed around the edges, or maybe totally frayed around the edges. But what I can just tell you is that I know I'm rational, I've thought about it, I've put the footage together, I've looked at it, I've talked with people about it, and I don't need anybody to prove to me that this is really happening. I have people all the time tell me that, it's just my imagination. That's what most of the people on YouTube will tell me, the majority. But a few of the people that have had stuff like this happen to them, or have had the Holy Ghost reveal that these kind of things can happen, they know that it's real. And it is hard to separate out, because, the fact of the matter is, Rex, I'm sure you know this, a lot of people that you probably run into, do have a screw loose, and they are not perceiving things correctly. They may have seen one or two things, or maybe they saw nothing. They're just they're just frayed mentally. But I can tell you for sure, and zero doubt about it, that this phenomenon is not only real, but it is weird beyond anything I can imagine. Because what I couldn't understand at first was like, wait a minute, why would they spend so much money? Because I know it takes helicopter fuel, logistics, and all kinds of money to do this. And secondly, the risk of widening the exposure of this, because people are going to see it, and they're going to notice something. And then if I have a video camera filming it and I'm uploading it all the time, more and more people are being exposed to it. My April gang stalking report went viral, close to 250,000 views just in the last 30 days. And so even if the majority of those people think I'm a nut, still a lot of people are seeing it, and it seems like a lot of risk to do this. And so I just, even wrapping your head around how something like this could be, or why they would risk it, over a simple movie that I uploaded to the YouTube, which, by the way, in my opinion, a lot of people with the same thing with the helicopter harassment. Even if the video is right there, you know, most of the people looking at it, including my stepdad, who's a doctorate in mathematics, he believes in UFOs, takes a look at my footage and says, well, it's a little too grainy for me. I don't really see it, you know. So, you know, as one poster said, I thought it was a good saying, some things you have to believe to see it. Some things have to be believed to be seen. And so I couldn't understand how this level of, and it's just like right in everybody's face, these helicopters, you know, flying over with such frequency, and nobody could notice it. I mean, I figured the people in my apartment building at least would notice it, but I never heard about it from anybody. Never.
Now, do you think that they might have been doing some like MK Ultra stuff with you?
Oh yeah. I mean, this whole thing, and it took me a long time to believe anything like that could be going on. But with investigations, you know, doing your homework really counts for a lot. And I found out that they can use mind control stuff, and they are using it, and they are using it against me. I have a movie uploaded at my channel called Massive Gang Stalking in Japan, and it is translated from a Japanese gentleman who does a utterly fantastic job of explaining how he became a TI. He says it was for nothing that he did. He couldn't figure a single thing that he was part of any sort of activism group or, you know, protests or, you know, involved. Like a lot of people that get gang stalked, they were working at a government company at the time, you know, like some employee of some technology company that's developing something for the government, and then they just find that person and they just start gang stalking them. I think it's part of a larger experiment, these people that are chosen at random. But a lot of the people are chosen for psychic ability or for learning to, you know, open your third eye or whatever that is. And so those people get targeted. But this stuff, the guy that does the massive gang stalking in Japan video at my YouTube channel, see Richard Bruce on YouTube if you want to watch that video. Just type in Richard Bruce in the search engine and come right up. This guy describes that they put thoughts in his head, they controlled functions of his body, even controlling the consistency of his bowel movements. I mean, that's the extent of the control they have. And as weird as that sounds, I can confirm that things like that were happening to me. I didn't get a lot of that, but I got some of that. And sometimes it, you know, I have to wonder, you know, is it just because of something I ate or is it my imagination? But I got a lot of things that were similar to that. The thing that I was most sure about was these cramps that I would get in these night raids, because they would do it at the same time that they would do the midnight helicopters. And all of a sudden I would get these massive cramps in my calves. And I mean, it was like massive and scary, and I occasionally would get a cramp, like nothing like this. I mean, and it took me a little while to be able to believe that this was some kind of attack. And then I investigated directed energy weapons, and that they even have patents on directed energy weapons and all this psychological stuff, you know, like the MK Ultra stuff and all that. And it is real. I mean, there is if they're trying to keep the harassment and destruction and minimizing of people to a bare minimum secret, then you can begin to understand why they're keeping UFOs a secret. Because if we know about extraterrestrial technology, then we might be able to believe that they have technology that can actually control your thoughts from a distance. And they do.
Controlling your thoughts from a distance. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I have actually read some articles that have literally white papers discussing schematics and different motherboards, essentially, that hooked up to certain equipment and speakers and software, that you can actually send signals and words in people's minds. There was actually an article that came out a few years ago where they were doing it in a New York subway upon some type of marketing campaign or something, literally sending voices in people's minds. This has been released several years on the, you know, not even in the black ops market anymore. I mean, if you have a business, if you have the money, you can go purchase this stuff. So I wonder how advanced they are now, and if they're using the algorithms from searches that you put up with everything. Maybe if you've got a high definition TV set that's one of those smart TVs that has a microphone built in. Most people have Windows 10, which is a super duper spy tool. I mean, that thing just sends all your data back to Microsoft and whoever else. So I guess combined with maybe there's you know, this ET presence you're talking of, reptilian presence. I'd really like to know more about the work you've done on your shape-shifting. Let's talk about these entities and maybe, you know, who are they? What are they? How much power do they have? Where are they going? Do they really eat people? I know these are a lot of questions, but I'm sure we can keep up.
Yeah, well, sure. The subject of the non-humans is really what interested me, because if I kind of back up just a slight bit about how I even got into this, I was attending an anime convention in 2012, and I had been to this convention 4 years prior, but it was not held in downtown LA. It was held in Anaheim, which is a kind of a city town further south. And nothing went wrong at that particular convention, but there was a feeling that I got from it that I had never gotten before in my life. Now, I kind of wondered if maybe it was because the adult con was held in the same place. I don't know. But what I do know is when I got back to my apartment, I got this really weird, dark feeling that something was so wrong that I couldn't just sit still about it. I had to find out what that darkness was that I felt at that place. And I just started looking. And as I started looking on YouTube. And that's when I came across the 9/11 conspiracy thing. Now, I'm sure you're probably up on all this, so I won't bother to explain, but basically, for 10 years after the fact, I could not believe it. I could not believe that our own people had done this, that this was perpetrated by our own government or the black ops behind it or whatever, and that it wasn't really, in fact, Middle Eastern terrorists. I couldn't believe it for 10 years. When I saw the movie on YouTube, showing how that a 737 could not have crashed into the Pentagon and all the other science that was behind how the Twin Towers couldn't have fallen from fire and all the other stuff. I mean, just a plethora of information. But when I saw it with my own two eyes, that is when I realized that they can lie to you on a grand scale, and they most certainly are, and that all news is complete BS to keep us asleep. I mean, I don't even watch television anymore because of a message that God gave to me about it, because I love television, and even though I began to suspect all of this, I still watch it because I want to keep apprised of events and everything, but God told me in a message to not watch it, and so I stopped. And now
what was that message like? Sorry to interrupt.
No, no problem. It's because it was, okay, I'll tell you flat out what happens. There's a line in Scripture, which in Proverbs, and it says, reproofs of instruction are the way of life. When I get kicked in the groin with something, I'm out of money, I'm homeless living in my RV, and then I get a big $80 parking ticket that I can't pay. That's a reproof of instruction. I know somebody else may not see it that way, but when you open your heart to God and you let Him in and you begin to see these things are actually messages, and I got that ticket right as I was about to buy a combination TV DVD player, and when that happened, I didn't suspect it at first, and then I sat down and thought about it. Wait a minute, is this a message about something? Because I've gone through all this time without any problem like this. Because when something goes wrong, I ask myself, was there something I was doing? And sure enough, I was right in the process of buying this TV thing, and I knew it was a message about watching TV. So that's how I knew it was a message.
One thing I've often thought about TV is it's such a powerful tool with the subconscious mind and conditioning people, sculpting people. No matter how well versed you are in the conditioning process that the TV can have on you, even if you've got multiple doctorate degrees in psychology, it still has an impact on what you think and how you react. And the powers that be know this, and they've taken their formulas and turned it into this just incredible science. So I guess if you're watching a film and the people that create that film have a certain agenda, it's almost like magic. If you watch that happen, you are a part of that formula. You are a part of that ritual, whether you want to be or not. Now, if you're conscious of it, that's one thing. So maybe you're not going to do the things that it's trying to subliminally program you to do and literally hypnotize you, but you're still a part of it one way or another. So unplugging from TV, I can definitely see how that could have an impact on your psyche, on how you discuss things, on how you feel, how you talk, how you interact with others, and that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I agree. It is. All I can say is that, I got the, I had a German guy contact me, and he told me that he was being driven by this crazy whining noise that he couldn't figure out. And he thought it was the TV finally, and he shut the TV off, but he noticed he kept hearing it. Then he unplugged the TV, and it stopped. And then I found out from somebody else that they've had it like ever since 1975, that they can, even with tube TVs, they can watch you while you're watching TV.
Since when?
I don't know, something like 1975. That's what I heard.
Wow.
In fact, somebody said if you wanted a TV that can't watch you, buy a TV from before 1975. But I don't know.
In black and white, ladies and gentlemen, 13 inches of pure enjoyment.
Yeah, I mean, I've got this movie that I uploaded called Television Hypnosis, and there's this. It's really they had this, back in the old days when they would play the national anthem like at the end of the day or like at 12 or something like that before they turned the TV off. Of course, now TV is 24/7. They don't do that anymore. But in that national anthem, it's da 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 da, and you actually see these subliminal signs. Obey, submit to authority, just like in They Live. And I mean, this was playing on TV. It is so weird what they did. And think now of the tools that they have. It's really scary. But just to get back to what I was saying about the story is that when I discovered that they can lie to us on a grand scale from the 9/11 incident, that's what broke my belief barrier. I realized that there was something about my realization earlier on in my casual study of UFOs and Roswell and everything, because what I figured was that the lie was so obvious, and yet nobody could do anything about it, and there was no evidence. That it finally dawned on me that two things: humans wouldn't keep from other humans the fact that we are not alone. I mean, that's just too big. It doesn't matter what technology they're going to gain from it, what technology superiority they're going to gain from the Russians or the Chinese or anybody that's going to mess with us. It just doesn't make sense. And the second thing that doesn't make sense is how they could keep as tight a lid on it as they have. And the only conclusion that I came to was that it had to be non-humans that are behind it. It has to be. I mean, because it just, it seems like somebody would have goofed up, or, somehow, some good, decent people would have said, hey, wait a minute, we got to tell the American people here that we're not alone. I mean, what military secret could we have that could possibly be worth keeping from man the most important information that man could ever know, that we're not alone in the universe, from their fellow man? I mean, how does that jive? How does that make sense? This BS story that they kind of concoct in various ways, saying, oh well, all the religious people are going to go nuts, or society is going to break down, or we're all going to go. I mean, we've been watching Star Trek all this time, and over half the people, I think it's like 75% now, fully believe in extraterrestrial life, and that a lot of it is probably living here, and they're not telling us something. So they know people aren't going to panic. So what I realized was that the darkness that I was feeling, and some kind of conspiracy that was underneath it all, had to be non-human in its source. And that's when I came across the reptilian shapeshifting subject on YouTube, which Janelles and Marine Dolfino, these are just names of YouTube users, and they have channels uploading this kind of thing. And frankly, they're rather unprofessional about it, and I didn't take it seriously because of that. They have loud psychedelic music, weird psychedelic shapes, and a lot of weird sort of ghost voices talking and stuff before they actually get to the footage. Nothing rational, nothing scientific, nothing explaining what we're seeing, in any sort of rational, scientific way. But then I came across a channel called Frequency Fence. And the person who made that channel, I found out later, is a woman named Christian Kunimi, Japanese, I think. I've never seen her face, but in any case, her movies were phenomenal. She was the pioneer of this subject. If you want to know who really made serious the whole video analysis reptilian shapeshifting subject, it was Christian Kunimi from the Frequency Fence channel. Now, just to give you a quick update before I move on, is that myself and a lot of people know that they got to her the same way I hear they got to David Icke and somebody else, Andrew Bashagio. They do something, okay? And I'm talking about dragging you in someplace and brainwashing you or replacing you with a clone or something. But total difference from the person that was there before. And her last 6 movies on the Frequency Fence channel actually go a long way towards discrediting all the fantastic work that she did before, because they're just weird. It's like it's not her anymore making these movies. It is her, but it's not. They don't make sense anymore. They don't. It's like she's saying all these weird things, and it just sounds like somebody who's has lost their sense of how to show something to somebody and make it sound rational and not like crazy. So, but in any case, back to the fact that when I saw this credible footage, and she did a report on the movie The Matrix with Keanu Reeves, which I was very familiar with. I mean, I live here in Hollywood, and I know that movie backwards and forwards. It was a cult classic favorite of mine growing up. Keanu Reeves, my childhood hero guy. And so I said, well, okay, she's pointing out claws and fangs and all kinds of weird stuff in this movie. And I'm seeing it there, and I'm going, wow. I mean, she's really explaining it with arrows and text and really telling us what we're looking at here. So, all right, Verizon is right over there. I'll just run over and grab a Blu-ray copy of The Matrix and do my own video analysis. And whoa, man, when I did, I mean, that's really what changed my mind about this, because it's one thing to see a movie that somebody else makes on something paranormal, but it's another thing to actually see something for the first time, because that's really, I will say it, that was really the first thing that I saw that woke me up. Oh my God, we got non-humans living among us, and not only that, you can get it from taking apart footage of movies and television. And you can do it as easily as pointing your video camera at your high-def TV and recording it, and then taking the footage apart in a simple, cheap $50 video editor and going through it frame by frame. And you just be amazed by what you see, especially if you know something about video. It does take a certain amount of background. I already had a background in digital imaging, so I had, at least some idea of what, what constitutes, some sort of artifact or video error, and what is a feature. But not only that, on some of this stuff, like you see on Harrison Ford's face or Keanu's hand with those claws, I mean, you just a common sense look at it, and you can tell there's something weird going on. So that's how I really realized that this whole thing really was about non-humans, and in particular the feature and the type of being that keeps showing up are these reptilians. And we're talking about like scales and spikes and fangs and claws and ridges, like you see a horny toad. Yeah, like in the Dragons of Blade Runner here. I mean, you can really see this stuff coming up. And by the way, the reason I had to upload it in 5-minute parts is because they deleted it twice when I tried to upload it. And I've seen people upload way bigger movies, way bigger size files, and they had no trouble. My movie, they deleted it twice, so I knew they were blocking it, and I decided to upload it in 5-minute parts. But this movie, The Dragons of Blade Runner, really does show you some of the best shape-shifting footage I've ever got. In fact, all you got to do, if you really want to find out if they are non-humans, get a copy of that movie, The Blade Runner, and by the way, a lot of people think the best way to do it is with a video card, and you think that that's the professional way, and they think taking a video camera to your LCD television set is kind of an old-fashioned technology. That's what I found out from Christian Kanemia frequency fans. They hide it in the codec. The same people who are behind all the technology that's released into our world make sure that technology that isn't in their favor goes with them. Now, you can catch some of this with video cards, but you will not catch nearly as much of it. Even 30 frames per second video camera pointed at your high-def TV, make sure it's in focus, and then you take that footage into your computer and go through it frame by frame using your keyboard in your video editor, 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames, and you will really see things that you have never seen before. I guarantee it. You will be blown away by it, especially if you're not, you're somebody who's at least halfway cognizant of what constitutes a video error and what isn't.
Well, and if you were to go look at some of the news anchors, their eyes a lot of times you'll see start to get cat-like almost. And, I've seen people that I've talked to just normally, though, and their eyes kind of do that sometimes, too. So, I mean, is that just a normal phenomenon that happens all the time with everybody, but sometimes we pick up on it? Or what's your thought on that?
Okay, there's a lot of room for confusion on this, and when people first find this subject, including myself, there's a lot of room for misinterpretation. I thought everybody that I saw those reptilian slit eyes on was a shapeshifter, whether they were reptilian or feline or whatever it was. And what I found out later, as I mentioned, when I did a self-analysis, I realized that the demonic entities that were living in me were causing these features. I mean, I noticed when somebody did a movie on me showing reptilian slit eyes when I was kind of in a dark area, I kind of looked at it and I said, oh, maybe it's a video error, I'm not sure. So I decided to do an in-depth investigation into myself. And I had done an investigation on myself, but what I hadn't done was the frame by frame. What I had been doing previously was going through it slowly with the scrubber, so sliding the scrubber slowly along. That's why I was specific about going frame by frame, because there are changes that happen in a single frame, and I'm talking about 60 frames per second here, and that's if you really want to go to town, but 30 frames per second will work. You will catch shape-shifting that way. And also the file might be more wieldy depending on the speed of your computer. But you will see those features. And to your question about what those reptilian slit eyes are, those slit eyes, most of the time, I would say, you're seeing a result of the indwelling spiritual being more commonly known as demons.
So the demons that, do you think the demons really that people see sometimes in these films and stuff that kind of come out of people, I guess you could say, with their eyes changing and stuff, do you feel that they have a real big influence on the way that people act and just their emotions, etc.?
Oh yeah, Rex. I mean, this is really a grand revelation. I mean, now that we can see these things, that there's some kind of physical manifestation. Because in my mind, demons were always just some sort of kind of abstract notion, that I had been reading in the Bible. It didn't really seem real to me. They're like, these wispy spiritual entities, and who knows what they're really about? Who knows if they're real? You can't prove a darn thing, and so there's really no point looking into it. But now I realize, and this is something that's really important. If you want an education in this, go on YouTube and go to the Chris LaSala channel, Chris LaSala, and watch his first 5 movies, and you will just be amazed, because this explains. See, I didn't realize how influential and how important this whole demon thing was, because I was focusing, Rex, on the physical demons, the physical beasts, rather. And by the way, just so you understand, beasts is the biblical term. The phrase beasts of the field shows up 29 times in the Old Testament, and I figured out from that is the term for these sentient, bipedal, high technology wielding beings that look like a human being, except for the fact that their heads are in beast form, whether they're insectoid or whether they're feline or canine. And you got all of these various aliens, and they are aliens. I do think that they're living on these various planets or whatever. They're not just interdimensional. They may be interdimensional as well, but I'm not one of those people who think that, there's no aliens. The problem with Christians is that it's either, or with Christians and non-Christians, it's either God but no aliens, or aliens but no God. And I don't take that simple approach. It's a complex smattering of things happening here, which is so confusing to the person first confronted with these things that we can't readily prove, or we didn't grow up with as acknowledged fact. And our own education system and government makes anybody who talks about this stuff seem like they're a little bit on the fringe. That all the more makes it difficult to come to a cohesive understanding of what's happening here. But I think that now, with the internet and information becoming more widely available, that it will start to change. People will start to realize that not only do we have non-humans, but we have spiritual beings that are also influencing us. What I understood from the Chris LaSala channel is that these spiritual entities, demons, which my current theory is that these are disembodied beasts, and they occupy the 4th dimension. But that it's all described in the Bible. But essentially, we are really even born with thousands of these creatures piled in us, and it's impossible to understand, because we don't understand a living, thinking being as being something that could occupy the same space with thousands of other thinking beings with complete features, reptilian features, feline features. I caught feline features, a feline-looking beast that I turned into, or it shows up in a single frame, and in the next frame I look like a reptilian being with scales around my eyes and slit eyes and these weird shapes in my teeth, and then another frame and I look like something I can't even describe. But the most of that shape-shifting that I've seen, that's minus the physical shape-shifting like you see on Harrison Ford's face and Keanu's cloth, it's not like that ultra clear, physical shape-shifting, is in this sort of blue ghosting shape. It's like a kind of a bluish white. At least that's how it's manifest in my cameras. That's how I've been able to see it. And you can see, if you are looking for it, you can see it in these faces that are everything from very small, like a little tiny inch on someone's face, to these large creatures that look like the head is actually 3 feet wide, like behind the person, kind of like behind the person or next to the person. So it is, and just weird beyond imagining. I mean, one thing I can say is a common feature is that they generally seem to have these huge mouths. I mean, like a giant mouth full of cone-shaped shark teeth, like elongated shark teeth, that actually don't make sense from an animal survival point of view, except for maybe like a crocodile or a shark that has a huge mouth and uses its mouth like that. I mean, if this was an intelligent being trying to chew a steak, or eat some corn or an apple or something. I mean, these shapes don't make any sense at all. I mean, they don't even make sense from any sort of rational point of view. You get these weird faces with these huge mouths and these huge shark teeth that are like twice as long as a shark tooth would be as far as its dimensions. It's like a lot longer, and you would think that they would break these off. But what I'm thinking is somehow that these creatures that are in what Chris LaSala calls the demonic realm, New Agers call it the fourth dimension, whatever it is, that dimension, they can see us, we can't see them. According to this one guy who does a movie about how God showed him the demonic realm, he says that like for every person, there's like thousands of demons. So the guy's name was Howard Pittman, if you want to check him out. His book is called Placebo. But he says that God dropped the veil and showed him that all of these people just walking around, showed some people to him at work and showed some people walking around. He says around every single person, there's all these demonic beings swirling around. They're trying to get into the body. They're trying to influence the person. They're just like they're all just waiting for an opportunity. And their primary goal is to corrupt you with your own decisions. They want you to make the choice to do that thing that you want. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be food that isn't healthy, or or it could be sex, something having to do with lust, or it could be power, something having to do with business or money. It doesn't matter what it is. They know all the tricks that you have no idea can even exist. And what I realized is, as hard as it is to believe, this happens on a level that we can't. You may not be able to believe this, but I really am kind of a nuts and bolts person. I like to see the science. When people make some weird claims, I don't believe them right away. I like to see some rational evidence. And with this demon thing, the frustrating thing about it is, at least until now, is where we can't see a bloody thing of it. But now I think this reptilian shape-shifting video exposure analysis gives us a window to at least see that these things exist and are affecting us, and I think are even a bigger, more relevant issue than the physical beasts living among us. And I do believe clearly that there are these physical beasts living among us. It's just that, as this one guy was great on YouTube, he's getting really mad, getting on the camera, and he goes, "Yeah, if you don't believe it, then you need to believe that people know how to keep a secret." And they do, and it seems impossible to us. Like, oh, come on, there can't be these people that actually transform into giant lizard people, and then behind closed doors they have these big meetings. Like did you see the Arizona Wilder movie with David Icke, Revelations of a Mother Goddess?
I didn't, but let me ask you about David Icke real quick. I'm glad you brought him up again, because I read the book The Biggest Secret about 10 years ago, and at that point in my life, I was Christian, and I read that book, and it kind of pointed out some ideas to the fact that the Christian religion that many people believe in now has been based on other religions and deities, etc. At least the connections that he put together. And then I just started doing a whole bunch of other research, and I mean, that book really blew my mind, man. I mean, with just all the dots that he connected, it took it to the next level, just as far as me questioning things like, why have we always been told that if we think outside of our typical senses that it's something demonic or evil, and just other stuff, But then I read the book of his Infinite Love is the Only Truth, Everything Else is Illusion. And it had a completely different approach towards the reptilian agenda. And I thought to myself, man, did somebody get to him? What happened? And I'm not saying somebody did or didn't. I don't know. I mean, he still comes out with some amazing material. I'd love to have him on the show. But why did you say that?
Okay. I heard about it on the Supreme 600 channel. That is James Rink. You've probably heard of him. He's a super soldier. And he interviews this guy named Jay Essex, who is a astral projectionist, psychic. And he says that he was able to read that David Icke and Andrew Basiago got, I guess what they call it, taken in or changed or whatever it was. He says he couldn't see exactly what it was they did to him, but it says they did something to him. And he says that he felt sorry for David Icke because in his psychic reading, he saw how whatever it was they did to him was extremely painful. And, to be honest with you, Rex, no one's more sorry about that than I am, because I read his book, Children of the Matrix, and I thought it was excellent. Not only that, we wouldn't know half of what we know right now unless it wasn't for David Icke. So, I'm grateful to him, but he did come against me in a complete hypocritical manner. All over his website and at his YouTube channel, he talks about freedom of speech, and he uses footage from everybody's channel. I use a little bit of footage to show him shapeshifting or demonic distortion, and he files a copyright claim against my channel not once but twice. And if you get if you get 3 strikes, you can have your channel shut down. And that's just for using a little bit of his footage in what I believe is a fair and honest. I wasn't, like out to smear somebody. I had a lot of respect for him. But when I kept hearing about people saying that he was shapeshifting, which was probably just a demonic distortion that a lot of people have, including myself, and then when I made a movie about it, he files a claim against my channel for using his footage. And that's not, first of all, it's not freedom of speech. That's going against what he himself is doing, and left me suspicious. So on a more careful examination of David Icke, there's another guy, I forget his name, but I have it uploaded at my channel. And by the way, that was one of the movies that he gave me the copyright strike for, was this movie made by somebody else called The Biggest Secret About David Icke. And if you want a real interesting insight into David Icke and about how many of his earlier doctrines, including that book you were talking about, are in fact satanic. If you look at the Luciferian doctrine, the doctrine of Madame Blavatsky and Alex Crowley and all these people, they have like there's similar identifying things that you can identify out of their rhetoric, and it was exactly what David Icke was putting forward. He does a side-by-side analysis, and you really see it. So, despite the fact that I had tremendous respect for this guy, because I think, in my opinion, Rex, he was an honest researcher and incredibly brilliant and brave and willing to put this information out there. I mean, his interview with Arizona Wilder and what was that guy? That African shaman, Credo Mutwa.
Yep.
Incredible stuff. I mean, and not only that. I mean, I had tremendous respect and like for this guy. I mean, I thought, wow, this guy is a hero in our own time. And for all that to happen, for him to file copyright strikes against my channel, which by the way means he had to have seen it, because the owner of the YouTube channel has to himself file the strike. He couldn't have had his people do it, so he had to have known about it. But then when you check out everything else, yeah, I do think they got to him, because I also heard that somebody that was they were about to do a radio show with him, and he said, he told me before the thing not to mention the Reptilians. Say what? But now, this is confusing because he will still talk about the Reptilians, but his leading cutting edge on that isn't there anymore.
Let me jump in real quick, though. Did you see the interview that he did with Jesse Ventura, where Jesse Ventura basically edited it to where he made him look kind of like he didn't know what he was talking about?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I actually think Jesse Ventura was wrong on that. I mean, if it went anything like he said, I mean, if somebody treated me the way Jesse Ventura treated him, I wouldn't like him either. I mean, he kept cutting him off, and he kept, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, you're having a conversation with me like a gentleman, and that's how you conduct an interview. But I mean, the way Jesse Ventura was coming at him, I wouldn't blame him, even if he has been taken over, and say, well, sorry, sir, but I'm not really interested in having a conversation with somebody that's trying to cram it down my throat every other sentence.
Right. I mean, you could tell he wasn't giving him enough respect to answer the questions properly, and then who knows what they edited it out, So I looked at that like, wow, why would you do that? Why would you invite him on your show, ask him questions, and then try and manipulate the situation to where he looked like he didn't know what he was talking about, unless you had a specific agenda to do that, whether it be for ratings or whatever else it could be for. But I just wonder, man, I mean, there's so much stuff out there, Richard, that points to this feeding of dark ecstasy. And I can't prove that there's reptilians. I can't prove that there's demonic forces that control people that do these really evil things in my eyes, but I can certainly see it. And I have a conscience, so I can feel when something's right and wrong, but maybe they don't, so I can't judge them, but I can certainly protect myself and my family, and as everybody else should be able to. So, I mean, with all this stuff going on, and if you look at it at a global scale, it definitely seems like there's this rogue faction that has so much power behind the scenes, and they just feed off of hurting people and taking without giving back. So I also hear and interview people that talk about good entities and ETs that want to save the world, and everybody's going to be happy and kumbaya and free energy, but I haven't seen it yet. It seems like for every good thing that comes out there, there's an opposite to that. Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as much good is out there, it seems like there's this counterbalance that has the exact amount of energy that's negative or bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head as far as the $1 million question on the friendly ETs. There's like 3 huge questions, and that's one of them. If there were friendly ETs, and I'm perfectly willing to say that there might be, I don't know. It's just the big question is, if they really are trying to help us, how hard would it be, Rex, to get together with somebody, even if they have like defenses keeping aliens away from this planet, which is my theory for a long time now, but they could make a movie with someone. They could get somebody off on one of their ships. Okay, let's say they abducted me and they took me on board one of their ships. They break out a video camera and you can clearly see it's a non-human. The guy's communicating with me telepathically, and I could be shooting with my regular Earth-made video camera. I'm saying, okay, yeah, you can see this alien standing next to me. Okay, I'm telling you it's not CG. You can see it's not CG. And so you can see that we have non-humans, and he's telling me all this stuff. He's from planet Andromeda, whatever. And and to at least break the belief barrier among Earth humans and the stigma against talking about extraterrestrials, it seems like that would be an easy thing to do. But they don't do that. Not a single one will show up on YouTube or come down and show up on somebody's video camera and post it on YouTube, even if they block all the television media, which of course they would, and all major internet news outlets. But they couldn't stop individuals. Like if they made copies of DVDs and then passed them out to a bunch of people, and those people uploaded it to YouTube, then we could, they would say, okay, fine. Now at least we break the belief barrier. But there's that, the fact that that they don't do that, and the fact that they don't show up, and then why though? If there are, like, see, I have trouble by. I mean, maybe there are. I don't know, Rex. But maybe there are friendly ETs trying to help us, but I don't see it. So it's kind of hard to confirm any of that, and I begin to wonder if a point of view that I really don't like. I really don't like what I find a lot of these Christians, I call them the flat earth Christians, Rex. It's really embarrassing for Christians, these flat earth people. It's so ridiculous, because you even have other Christians who say God showed them the earth and it was a globe. It's so ridiculous. But the one element of...
I think it's a psyop. I really do. I think that they got it to a few people, and then it got to another one, and you got this 100 monkey syndrome, where it was originated, maybe orchestrated at some of the higher levels, almost like this MK Ultra type, offshoot or something to keep people, or wag the dog, whatever term you want to use. But it certainly has gathered a lot of steam. I mean, I've seen videos with 250,000 views, 500,000 views, talking about they swear that the Earth is totally flat. It's flat, man. You're a devil worshiper if you don't believe it's flat. I'm telling you.
I know, isn't that ridiculous?
Worship the devil. It's flat.
Have you ever taken an airplane to Europe and seen the curvature of the Earth from the outside of the window? I mean, it just doesn't. And not only that, I mean, let's even if you couldn't prove it. And by the way, there's just no way. But I mean, where does that argument lead? It just makes you look stupid. And I mean, before you do that, take a plane trip with a video camera and prove it. Okay. Then come back and tell us that the Earth is flat. But what I was going to say though is that I think that's just to make Christians look stupid. By the way, I think what's an even one thing that I really, along similar lines, is that they say that there's no aliens. No aliens. What that means is, what they're essentially saying, that all aliens, or so-called aliens, are just demons or fallen angels. Okay. So. Now, that never made sense to me, but what you have to say then, Rex, is that all of astronomy is a lie. Because you can't really say that there are trillions of planets and stars and galaxies out there, and all of them are empty, except for us and some fallen angels, or devils, or demons. And so all of those planets don't have any other intelligent life, that maybe don't have a single thing to do with Satan or hell or anything like that. They don't even know about Satan, they don't even know about hell. They never did, they were never part of it. And they are actually intelligent, wonderful people that we would love to meet and benefit from. It's possible. But on the other hand, the fact that somehow all we get, or the only ones that are abducting us, so that we're having contact with, I'm doing a study currently on the abductions, and it is utterly amazing how we got 5% of the people, 5% of Americans, and that's a modest estimate, 5%, and it's growing, being abducted. I mean, can you believe it?
And that's people that are very, can say that they remember.
Right.
How many people don't remember that or don't want to talk about it, so the numbers could actually be quite a bit higher.
Right. Well, I read 2 books on the subject with 2 different points of view. One has a positive and one has a negative. The positive was Meet the Hybrids by Barbara Lamb, and I actually went to one of her lectures.
Hey, I interviewed her. She thinks that she actually is really got the thought process that most ETs are good. She said she even met a reptilian once that was all nice to her. So, interesting lady. I really liked her.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, her book Meet the Hybrids is fascinating, utterly fascinating. I mean, the story of the woman who transformed into that reptilian. I mean, that was amazing. And then you got the other point of view, which is and you, also one of your interviewees, Dr. David Jacobs. And if you ask me, though, his approach is much more reliable, much more respectable in my opinion. I mean, I learned more from, I have more respect for Dr. David Jacobs. He wouldn't give me the time of day if I told him I was a Christian, but nonetheless, and by the way, I just got through reading like the first 3 chapters of a Christian book, Unholy Communion, and oh, Rex, I mean, it's a disgrace. Okay, these are Christians, and they made a good movie. Joe Schimmel and this other guy made this really good movie that I have on my channel that talks about it. But this book is a disgrace. I mean, if you want to learn something, you need something that is a rational, has some kind of rational scientific point of view. That I like what David Jacobs does. He points out the various problems with the analysis that he does, as far as misreading and stuff. And I think that's very professional to point out those problems and what he does about it. And then his conclusion, in my opinion, if you were to ask me who's right between Jacobs or Lamb, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's Jacobs. I mean, he gives he says that he didn't want to think something scary about it, as he said on that interview that you gave with him. He says he doesn't want to think something negative about it. He never wanted to think. He never wanted to be scared of this, but the evidence showed him the unpleasant truth. And I think if you're looking for something that's very hard to prove or believe anyway, you have to have scientific, rational analysis. Otherwise, it's really hard. You can't just come at it with a bunch of opinions that people can't base anything off of, especially even Christians like myself who know the Scripture. But just to come at somebody with a bunch of opinions rather than some sort of cohesive fact presentation is just not convincing.
Kind of does an in service, I mean, I've had people on the show before that weren't prepared for the presentation, and as much as I appreciated it, the comments you would read would be like, man, this guy wasn't prepared, he wasn't on par, why did you have him on the show? And I think that's one thing, if you go and are going to speak the word, whether you're Christian or agnostic or Gnostic or whatever your belief is, know what it is and be able to present that when somebody asks you to, especially when you're going to be on an outlet that has hundreds of thousands of people that are going to view that information.
Right. Definitely. Well, I mean, just to get back to the main question that you asked, I mean, the issue is we're facing a non-human problem here, Rex, in my opinion. I mean, if you were to say, what's the issue? Because if we as a race, if we as a people, as a planet, are not even willing to address the non-human issues seriously, I mean, we're not even going to, it's like having a termite problem and not acknowledging that there's termites involved. There's something else involved. It's moisture, it's age, there's no termites. That's what we're looking at, in my opinion.
Now, Richard, how often are you harassed now?
On a daily basis, every single day, usually 2 or 3 times a day, air stalking for the most part.
So you'll just see a lot of helicopters kind of following you around and stuff?
Well, I've explained this. What they like to do is especially if it's something that's pissed them off. That's usually like if I recently uploaded a movie,
right,
or gave an interview like this. They're going to love me when I come out of the Starbucks. Whenever I leave an establishment, or whenever I'm going to walk up to an establishment, whenever I'm talking to somebody, or whenever I'm doing something like this, like I've been getting a lot of background noise here that I don't normally get here. They do things like this. They want to disrupt you. They want to put pressure on you. But as far as the gang stalking, oh yeah, when I walk back to my RV, there'll be a helicopter that'll be flying directly overhead, or there'll be airplanes going, like right overhead to let me know. It just sounds so weird. It sounds like I know it does sound paranoid if you haven't experienced anything like this, but it's one of those things that you have to experience to believe. And that's all I can really say about it, because they are smart about it. I will say this, though, that when that April report went viral, the amount of harassment suddenly and noticeably dropped off. So they are afraid of exposure, and they do take measures to minimize it.
Well, I mean, do you think that the Reptilians said, hey, follow this guy around with these helicopters? Or, I mean, are there people that just have certain triple letter badges that are kind of the gatekeepers of this stuff? Have you been able to even figure it out, or what are your thoughts with that?
Okay, there's a guy, he's a sociology professor, or graduate rather, and I uploaded one of his movie, and what he basically says is, and I think is correct, because after watching it I realized that their reaction time to this is too quick. On Ripley's Believe It or Not, Rex, they have an AI hooked up to your consciousness. They know what you're thinking 24/7 a day, okay? They know what your thoughts are. And somebody doesn't have to sit behind a control and think about, okay, let's see, we'll get a chopper going over them a little bit later, and we'll do this later or that later. No, they come up with a formula, and they do it upon certain thoughts that you'll have or certain actions that you're taking. It does seem like there's an intelligence behind it, and they can do a gang stalking issuance, when they so choose. But I think on a daily basis, there's an AI that controls it, a computer that monitors your thoughts, monitors what you're doing, and can get you. I know this sounds nuts, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I mentioned it earlier, when I pull down my pants to go to the bathroom, and I don't have my video camera in my hand, that's when they'll start up a buzz. Even if they know that I'm quick, and I'll pull up my pants, open up my video camera, and jump outside and film that baby to get some more exposure that they don't want, they do that just to put pressure on me. I know it sounds crazy, but they do. And people who have experienced this, especially if you watch that movie, Massive Gang Stalking in Japan, you will see that the attention to detail defies human thinking. A really good book was Susan Reed's The Body Snatchers, if you haven't read it. This is a must-read for someone like yourself if you haven't read it. I had read some of her stuff and seen some videos that quote her, but until I read the book, I didn't see the extent of it. But these are reptilians that she's dealing with. And what one thing that always stuck out for me was that the reptilian that talked to her and spilled the beans on their whole program of harassment and attachment to people and all this stuff. And she said that the reptilian said to her, "You humans will never understand the way reptilians think." And this is a really important statement, because what I was getting to there is that we can't understand why someone would do these little petty things that just seem like little petty things, like why spend time and money on this little petty tactic? But there is a genius to this whole thing, which I finally realized is behind it. When you add up that stuff, it does count for something. They don't do this for no reason. It has a purpose. I think that's one thing David Jacobs makes a really good point on, when he talks about the fact that, and this is different from the reptilians, but he points out that the mantis aliens, or the Greys, every time they do something, it is definitely with a purpose. They are not like us. They're not like humans who just kind of do wild stuff at any given moment. I mean, they are very purpose-driven. And this gang stalking thing has all kinds of weird little components, everything from controlling people to get in your way, to weird things like having fire trucks light up their sirens. The same thing. They do it right when you're coming home or right when you're going to enter a place. You think, how can they do this? How can they get somebody who is just a regular fireman to do this stuff? Because they can control people from within. They can control their thoughts. On a subliminal level, they know that they're doing it. They're part of the system. They're serving Satan. Satan is who's behind it, in my opinion.
So, maybe there's just this entire satellite control grid system that, as you said, it has these algorithms that can follow your habits. So when you're least expecting it or most vulnerable, that's when they'll do their sirens or mess with you in some way, shape, or form. I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Michael Weiss a few weeks ago, and he's a targeted individual. He's actually got video footage of full-on airplanes, full-sized airplanes, commercial jets, hovering, following him around in the suburbs. It's crazy. And then he's got footage of these cylinder-shaped UFOs that release what looks like these almost drones, miniature drones out of it or something like that. I called it gray goo. It just looked kind of strange. And he had dead rabbits in his front. He exposed a video once on YouTube, kind of like you, that it showed this aircraft just hovering. Literally, it was a full-size aircraft just hovering in the air, no sound, nothing, not moving. And he put it on YouTube. And the next day, he's got a bunny rabbit in his front yard with its head cut off and no blood.
That's just insane. You got to give me the link for that.
Absolutely, yeah. It was wild.
Send me the link. That is just crazy, dude. But that is the kind of thing they do. See, here's the thing. Well, I'll just tell you my theory is that one of the main reasons we get this is because they want you to shut up, basically. And what do they want you to shut up about? They don't want their existence to be known. Their survival depends on secrecy. That's what at least I think, that was why they went through the trouble they went through with me, is that they know that enough of this exposure over time can change people's minds, especially young people who haven't had their minds closed to the truth.
Let me ask you this too. Have you ever heard weird clicking sounds on your phone? I mean, are there other strange things that happen? Do you come home one day and stuff's moved out of place? Do you think that they've got your house bugged?
No, I don't. I haven't had any of this stuff like a lot of people describe, like when they walk out of their house, all of a sudden everybody walks out of their house at the same time, or people following them down the street or something like that. I don't get any of that stuff, and I don't get like voices in my head or hot flashes or anything like that. But I do think that they may have been doing something with my bowels, as embarrassing as that is to admit. But it could also be, it could have just been, something to do with my body that didn't have to do with that, or radiation or something else. But it just seemed weird that, that I would be just getting a lot of trouble with my bowels, like, just weird, like irregularities that I don't normally get, and I didn't get before this time. But it's hard to prove it, so I don't like to say that I know for sure that that's happening. What I will say, though, and I didn't mention this before, and this, again, also is something that I can't prove in any way, shape, or form the way I can with the existence, at least, of non-human features, is that I believe that they tried to kill me at least twice. And, the actor Paul Walker from the Fast and Furious series?
They got taken out in the Porsche.
Right. He was with a friend, and they were in a $500,000 Porsche, and it crashed into the only gas line in the area, in this Chino Hills area, which is about 20 minutes from where I live. I'll tell you straight out, and I said this in in the original Dragons of Blade Runner movie. I was reading, after I heard about that, saw that, I was reading in the Psalms, Psalm 27:2, and it says, when my enemy and my foe came to eat up my flesh, then they stumbled and fell. And what I can tell you, Rex, the best I can do with this is say that it seemed to me, and it does still seem to me, as though what that was that that actor, Paul Walker, and that guy that was with him were beasts on their way to eat me. They were on their way to eat me, Rex. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's what revealed into my mind. I have no backup for that, but that's what I realized. That's what that was, and I still believe it to this day. If you look at that overall crash, that whole thing was weird. The way they crashed like that. First of all, the crash was weird, but the fact that they crashed into the only gas line in that area is even weirder. And then they both burned up alive, trapped in the car. And,
but what would that have to do with eating you?
Well, what I think happened was when the order came down, they knew that I was doing this. They identified me as an enemy, and they're all very organized, these serpents. And they said, hey, let's get our guy in L.A. to go over and finish this guy. We'll have him and his friend can have a little lunch and take care of the problem, see? And so they ordered him and his serpent friend to come out and have a little snack. It didn't work out. And from that, they found out that they better not screw with me. Now, I'll tell you something else. I was in my apartment. It was about 6:30 p.m., and all of a sudden, this horrific, bright, green lightning flashed right outside my balcony. This is my apartment in Woodland Hills, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. This huge, bright, green flash just went boom like that, and it just boom, shook the building. And everybody came outside and went, whoa, what is that? And later on, it just came to me that this was a super soldier on his way to finish me. And again, God put a stop to him. Bam, fried him right there on the spot. But that is speculation. I have no corroborating vision or proof or anything to go with that. Those two episodes are purely something that came into my mind, which I don't like to be like one of those Christians who automatically say it was the Holy Ghost revealing it. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
Well, that's definitely a very interesting theory, and a lot of people have speculated that there was a drone strike that actually caused that explosion because there was very little left from the accident. So I don't know, it's interesting. You know what else I noticed too? There could be maybe a synchronicity here, maybe not, but there was a movie that came out very shortly after, but it was filmed right before, and it was a film about him basically stealing cars and racing cars, and I think he died in the car. It was a Netflix film. You can actually look it up on Netflix. Just type in his name on Wikipedia, and it's one of the last films that he did. I think it may have even been the last film. So what a weird synchronicity there, huh? I mean, it's like almost like that AI you're talking about. Maybe maybe it pre-wrote his destiny and then it followed it out. That's pretty interesting. So I don't know, man. You're definitely living in the Twilight Zone. So coming up with those speculations that people are going to say, wow, that's crazy and far out there. Well, like you said, you can't prove it. That's just what you feel, and you're not verifying that either way. And that's, who knows, man? That's interesting. I've heard about the super soldiers. I even interviewed somebody that said he was a super soldier, but there was so much stuff in the interview that made me question. I had more questions after the interview than I did before with that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you're reasonable about it, and rational, and say, if I can't prove it, all I can do is put it forward as, this is what I think happened, but I could be wrong. Maybe that's not what happened at all. But, that you at least show that you're a rational thinker, if you're reasonable about it, the problem is you begin to lose trust in somebody when they have too much pride and they can't, just kind of have a reasonable, open mind and say, oh, maybe I was totally wrong about that. And all these years I've had this misconception. I mean, when I got into this reptilian shapeshifting thing, and then I discovered the frame-by-frame analysis of demons on myself, and I figured out that all of these shapes that I've been seeing in other people that look like physical shapeshifting, as a matter of fact, these may not have been beasts at all, but people like you and me who have an especially strong demonic presence, which I think or a demonic indwelling, rather. And that's why you get people like Harrison Ford and Keanu Reeves and Barack Obama show these extraordinary features because they have stronger indwelling of these spirits, and for some reason you can catch it on video in certain conditions. So it's pretty weird, but I think if you take a rational approach to your presentation, saying that you don't know for sure and you're willing to admit when you're wrong, then that's someone at least I can trust.
Right, absolutely. Well, man, I certainly hope that you don't get any more flack for coming out and exposing the things that you have today here on the Leak Project. I certainly appreciate you coming on the show with us. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us before you close out tonight that I maybe should have asked and didn't? And before you answer that, I just recommend our audience, if you're interested in some of these videos, if you want to see more footage of what looks like these shapeshifters right in front of your eyes, many of them in Hollywood and the media, check out freeourworld.org. Also go to YouTube, and you'll have access to the videos on there as well.
Thank you for that. And there is one important thing that I would say, and that is that I think the reason that Paul Walker crashed into that gas line, and the reason that super soldier fried up in a green fireball in front of my apartment, is because I had the protection of the faith of Jesus Christ. And that those people who try to expose these reptilians and or their allies, these devils and demons or anything of this sort, and do not have that protection, are really asking for something a lot worse. I mean, I don't even think that I could be here if it wasn't for the fact that I had the protection of God. And I would just say that, I understand the skeptics, and I understand the people that are highly against and are disgusted by what we see with most Christians. And I experience that too. But that doesn't mean that the Word of God is something that you should take lightly. And I mean the authorized King James Bible, whom God revealed to me, is the perfect and inerrant Word, and is the only way you're going to win this, a friendship with the God of those words, and in particular, the name and salvation of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Right on. Well, that was a really cool thing to say, Richard, and your testimony is amazing. I certainly hope that you stay safe, and it sounds like someone's making an espresso right behind you. Do they have the steamer on, man? I just heard this. It's been fun.
Oh, great, man. I'm glad you liked it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk again soon, Richard. You have a great day.
Okay, bud. You too.
All right, cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have guest Richard Bruce with us. Now, Richard reached out to us at the Leak Project a couple weeks ago, and he's got a really cool YouTube channel with over 30,000 subscribers. Just look up Richard Bruce on YouTube. And he's also got a website called freeourworld.org. Now, Richard says he's a targeted individual, and ever since he released some video footage of what he thinks are shapeshifters in Hollywood, he says that he's had all sorts of attacks. He gets stalked. He has helicopters fly over his house at very peculiar times. And he feels that there might be an AI interface that's actually connected with helicopters flying over his house and other strange phenomena that's causing him issues. He talks about demons and how he thinks that a lot of times when people see certain clips and images of what looks like somebody shapeshifting, it isn't a reptilian shapeshifter from another planet per se, but most likely some type of demonic influence. Now, this is a very fascinating interview that I have with Richard, and although I don't know what to think about some of the things that he says, I can certainly appreciate him coming on the show and giving us his testimony. He thinks that the world is controlled clandestinely, literally, by demons and an off-world source that could be reptilian. This is one of the first interviews I've done like this, and I know that many of you that listen to Leak Project, I'm sure you've seen some footage on YouTube or other places where you can see anchormen, anchorwomen, their eyes start to shift. I've seen people in the entertainment industry, it looks like they've got two sets of eyelids, and maybe it was just very meticulously photoshopped. Could be the reflection of the light with contacts. There's a whole bunch of more realistic explanations. But when you listen to this presentation and some of the stuff Richard talks about, it really makes you wonder. Check out leakproject.com. If you subscribe on Leak Project, it's absolutely free. You'll have access to exclusive content, and you'll also have the option to download and listen live stream to our podcasts ad-free. Now, that does cost a couple of bucks if you want to download or listen to them live streaming ad-free. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day wherever you are. Enjoy the show, and remember, be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Have a wonderful day. This demonic presence that you see a lot of times on TVs where you'll see anchormen or women, basically their eyes will get weird. You'll see what looks like these 4D skulls start going on them and stuff. And a lot of times I see it as just camera anomalies and stuff. But I have seen some before where I've been, that's impressive. I'm really wanting to see if there's a way that we could technically break it down and find out more about it versus just what we're seeing with our eyes based upon whatever it could be.
Yes, as a matter of fact, British director, British documentary filmmaker Chris Turner has me in a two-part series, and as a matter of fact, we set up a separate GoFundMe account to do a shape-shifting analysis, which he was going to conduct over there, and we were trying to get some money together to get some of the technical aspects of that, you know, the various cameras and everything else that we need for it. So that's actually in the works as we speak, but it may be a while before we get it off the ground.
Tell us more about that.
Well, basically, Chris Turner and Daniel Rogerson are filmmakers, British filmmakers, and I contacted Chris a couple of years ago, and because I had seen that he was working on the whole reptilian shapeshifting thing in a movie series called Alien Reptilian Legacy. So I thought I would tell him about my channel and what I discovered, and that I had discovered this whole thing. I discovered the subject on YouTube and started working on it, and showed him some of my footage, and this led to that, and then he actually sent me a thumb drive, and then I recorded some interview footage, and he's got me in two parts of the movie. I just had like a kind of a lead-in on the first movie, and I think he's going to do more of a feature of me on the second. But he was pretty intrigued by the shape-shifting footage and would like to have a full, as a matter of fact, he had me send him about 2 hours of shape-shifting footage for the British-held RepCon, which is pretty cool. It's like a convention for all the people that are interested in the reptilian subject, and all kinds of big names showed up there. Simon Parks, some other people, and James Bartley. And so it's pretty, a lot of people are starting to take this seriously, and the interest is growing.
So what do you think these demonic forces are, and where do you think they come from? So when you see somebody's teeth start to shapeshift into like vampire-ish teeth, real sharp fangs, you see their fingers start to come out, you don't think that's just based upon the light and the actual equipment itself not being able to pick up good enough footage? You feel there's like an outer source that's causing that?
Oh yeah, I mean, you get a lot of this. People think it's all kinds of things, every single kind of video error you can imagine, from a refresh rate to compression to just normal blurring that occurs. But a certain amount of experience with video and digital imagery will teach you, and common sense really. Like for instance, if you look at, I don't know if you're looking at the Free Our World page that you have up here, but
Yep.
you can see right there is Harrison Ford's face, and if you look at that, you know, the red image there, and you can see there's a zoom in on that shape that's on his forehead. Now, there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that could cause a pattern as specific as that. I mean, you can see what looks like, it almost looks like horny toad spikes coming right out of his forehead. And this is the movie Blade Runner, okay?
That's a classic movie.
It is one of my favorites, and I mean, I'm telling you, Rex, there is no horned beasts in the script. No matter how hard you want to believe it's not true. There's just absolutely no, you know, non-humans besides androids, which are in the shape of humans, not beasts of any kind with spikes coming out of their face. And this shot that you're seeing here, that little picture of Harrison Ford, that's taken in a far shot of him in that scene where that guy is chasing him through the bathroom, right?
Uh-huh.
He's in the bathroom, and he's sitting on the he sits on the side of the bathtub, and he's like, and he's putting the bandage on, and he's, you know, but what's happening is, and this is where the shape-shifting really starts to come out. Now, again, it could be one of two things. It could be that he's a physical shape-shifting beast, or in my thinking is more likely, because I've actually seen similar but not as strong shape-shifting on myself, a similar evil, maniacal, demonic grin. It's one of those two things, but what's happening, Rex, is that I believe it's what I call photonic delay, either low light or the amount of distance from the subject to the camera, but in either case, photonic delay, photonic weakness, that somehow reveals the underlying form of the person. And this, Rex, I believe, is where we get the classic transparency in a mirror that we see in vampire movies. Because what's happening when you look in a mirror is that you're not looking at the actual person, you're looking at a photonic image of the person, and that somehow reveals something about that person, that transparency. And that was the transparency that I actually have a pretty good example of, that I just happened to catch on Barack Obama in his 2013 State of the Union address. You actually see his hand moving in front of his chest, and it's transparent. And I think that's exactly what people are seeing. And what it is exactly, I couldn't tell you, but the indications are that it is a demonic being or spirit being in him that somehow manifests in a image rather than looking directly at the person with your naked eye.
Now, also with high-definition cameras, there's the 4K out now, which is even better than the older high-definition 1080p, 720, 480i, etc. So I guess it would be more difficult now to hide stuff like this, or do you think it would be easier because they could distort the digital frequencies somehow?
Well, several things about that. I think that, first of all, they're on to me. They know about this, and what I've noticed in newer movies is that they check their footage, or at least it looks to me like more people are checking their footage to make sure this isn't showing up. So I would say if you're going to scan movies for reptilian shapeshifting, look for sci-fis or movies with a lot of dark scenes from before 1995. But as far as the, I mean, if it does still show up, and/or the directors or people making these movies are not checking for it, and it is still there, I think it would show up even better in the 4K.
I mean, you would think so, absolutely. Now, what is this we're looking at right here with the illegal use of undeclared invisibility spy orb technology? And are you a targeted individual because of all this exposure?
Rex, I mean, there's one thing I can say with all certainty, because some people have some doubts or question about why they are harassed. In my case, I simply do not. It is absolutely because I uploaded this reptilian shape-shifting footage, because within 15 minutes of uploading my first full report on the movie The Matrix, which I called Reptilian Matrix Message, within 15 minutes, no kidding, there was like 7 or 8 helicopters hovering above my apartment, and it was so loud and so obvious that I thought it was a drug bust. I thought, oh my gosh, you know, one of my neighbors here it was a big apartment building in Woodland Hills, and I thought it was, you know, somebody's getting busted or somebody's gone crazy with a gun or something. But that's when this harassment first started. And there's no question, I mean, 0.0 doubt that it was because of the content of a YouTube movie that I uploaded. I mean, what kind of a country are we living in when you upload a movie to YouTube and all of a sudden you got helicopters buzzing you day and night police showing up at your door for an obviously bogus reason. I can explain that whole incident to you. It's so obvious. They're looking for a guy that's been gone for 8 months on some sort of BS, parole check, and they have 4 LAPD at the door. Kinda doubt it. And not only that,
when did they show up?
They
at
showed
the door?
up. They just showed up at the door, April 6th.
Like how long after the video?
Oh, it was like this was probably maybe a month or 2 after that first incident, that first upload.
Okay.
And what's weird is that as soon as they knocked on the door, I just had a sense. I had a sense that there was something going on. And then as soon as I said, "Who is it?" and they said police, as soon as I knew it was police. Now, again, it could be one of two things. It could be that he's a physical shape-shifting beast, or in my thinking is more likely, because I've actually seen similar but not as strong shape-shifting on myself, a similar evil, maniacal, demonic grin. It's one of those two things, but what's happening, Rex, is that I believe it's what I call photonic delay, either low light or the amount of distance from the subject to the camera. But in either case, photonic delay, photonic weakness, that somehow reveals the underlying form of the person. And this, Rex, I believe, is where we get the classic transparency in a mirror that we see in vampire movies. Because what's happening when you look in a mirror is that you're not looking at the actual person, you're looking at a photonic image of the person, and that somehow reveals something about that person, that transparency. And that was the transparency that I actually have a pretty good example of, that I just happened to catch on Barack Obama in his 2013 State of the Union address. You actually see his hand moving in front of his chest, and it's transparent. And I think that's exactly what people are seeing. And what it is exactly, I couldn't tell you, but what the indications are that it is a demonic being or spirit being in him that somehow manifests in a image rather than looking directly at the person with your naked eye.
Now, also with high-definition cameras, there's the 4K out now, which is even better than the older high-definition 1080p, 720, 480i, etc. So I guess it would be more difficult now to hide stuff like this, or do you think it would be easier because they could distort the digital frequencies somehow?
Well, several things about that. I think that...
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leap Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have guest Richard Bruce with us. Now, Richard reached out to us at the Leap Project a couple weeks ago, and he's got a really cool YouTube channel with over 30,000 subscribers. Just look up Richard Bruce on YouTube. And he's also got a website called freeourworld.org. Now, Richard says he's a targeted individual, and ever since he released some video footage of what he thinks are shapeshifters in Hollywood, he says that he's had all sorts of attacks. He gets stalked. He has helicopters fly over his house at very peculiar times. And he feels that there might be an AI interface that's actually connected with helicopters flying over his house and other strange phenomena that's causing him issues. He talks about demons and how he thinks that a lot of times when people see certain clips and images of what looks like somebody shapeshifting, it isn't a reptilian shapeshifter from another planet per se, but most likely some type of demonic influence. Now, this is a very fascinating interview that I have with Richard, and although I don't know what to think about some of the things that he says, I can certainly appreciate him coming on the show and giving us his testimony. He thinks that the world is controlled clandestinely, literally, by demons and an off-world source that could be reptilian. This is one of the first interviews shift into like vampirish teeth, real sharp fangs. You see their fingers start to come out. You don't think that's just based upon the light and the actual equipment itself not being able to pick up good enough footage? You feel there's like an outer source that's causing that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you get a lot of this. People think it's all kinds of things, every single kind of video error you can imagine, from a refresh rate to compression to, just normal blurring that occurs. But, a certain amount of experience with video and digital imagery will teach you, and common sense, really. Like, for instance, if you look at, I don't know if you're looking at the Free Our World page that you have up here, but
Yep.
You can see right there is Harrison Ford's face, and if you look at that, the red image there, and you can see there's a zoom in on that shape that's on his forehead. Now, there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that could cause a pattern as specific as that. I mean, you can see what looks like, it almost looks like horny toad spikes coming right out of his forehead. And this is the movie Blade Runner, okay?
That's a classic movie.
It is one of my favorites, and I mean, I'm telling you, Rex, there is no horned beasts in the script. No matter how hard you want to believe it's not true. There's just absolutely no, non-humans besides androids, which are in the shape of humans, not beasts of any kind with spikes coming out of their face. And this shot that you're seeing here, that little picture of Harrison Ford, that's taken in a far shot of him in that scene where that guy is chasing him through the bathroom, right? Uh-huh. He's in the bathroom, and he's sitting on the he sits on the side of the bathtub, and he's like, he's putting the bandage on, and he's, but what's happening is, and this is where the shape-shifting really starts to come out. Yes, as a matter of fact, British director, British documentary filmmaker Chris Turner has me in a 2-part series, and as a matter of fact, we set up a separate GoFundMe account to do a shape-shifting analysis, which he was going to conduct over there, and we were trying to get some money together to get some of the technical aspects of that, the various cameras and everything else that we need for it. So that's actually in the works as we speak, but it may be a while before we get it off the ground.
Tell us more about that.
Well, basically, Chris Turner and Daniel Rogerson are filmmakers, British filmmakers, and I contacted Chris a couple of years ago, and because I had seen that he was working on the whole reptilian shapeshifting thing in a movie series called Alien Reptilian Legacy. So I thought I would tell him about my channel and what I discovered, and that I had discovered this whole thing. I discovered the subject on YouTube and started working on it, and showed him some of my footage, and this led to that, and then he actually sent me a thumb drive, and then I recorded some interview footage, and he's got me in 2 parts of the movie. I just had like a kind of a lead-in on the first movie, and I think he's going to do more of a feature of me on the second. But he was pretty intrigued by the shape-shifting footage and would like to have a full, as a matter of fact, he had me send him about 2 hours of shape-shifting footage for the British-held RepCon, which is pretty cool. It's like a convention for all the people that are interested in the reptilian subject, and all kinds of big names showed up there. Simon Parks, some other people, and James Bartley. And so it's pretty, a lot of people are starting to take this seriously, and the interest is growing.
So what do you think these demonic forces are, and where do you think they come from? So when you see somebody's teeth start to shape... I've done like this, and I know that many of you that listen to Leak Project, I'm sure you've seen some footage on YouTube or other places where you can see anchor men, anchor women, their eyes start to shift. I've seen people in the entertainment industry, it looks like they've got 2 sets of eyelids, and maybe it was just very meticulously photoshopped. Could be the reflection of the light with contacts. There's a whole bunch of more realistic explanations. But when you listen to this presentation and some of the stuff Richa talks about, it really makes you wonder. Check out leakproject.com. If you subscribe on Leak Project, it's absolutely free. You'll have access to exclusive content, and you'll also have the option to download and listen live stream to our podcasts ad-free. Now, that does cost a couple of bucks if you want to download or listen to them live streaming ad-free. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day wherever you are. Enjoy the show, and remember, be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Have a wonderful day. This demonic presence that you see a lot of times on TVs where you'll see anchor men or women, basically their eyes will get weird. You'll see what looks like these 4D skulls start going on and stuff. And a lot of times I see it as just camera anomalies and stuff. But I have seen some before where I've been, that's impressive. I'm really wanting to see if there's a way that we could technically break it down and find out more about it versus just what we're seeing with our eyes based upon whatever it could be.